with his sponsorship to Gamma Group.
Welcome to Rumbo Minero. Welcome, Cesar. How is everything going for you?
What a pleasure, Jorge.
Here we go, the inaugural program of the year 2025. We are incredibly excited to announce that Jorge Leon Benavides and Cesar Campos will be joining us as well. Start again after more than 15 years with the television program Rumbo Minero and continue supporting formal mining, the mining that provides a large number of jobs. And for that, we have some important guests, Cesar.
That's right, Jorge. We are going to start a dialogue with the former Minister of Economy and Finance, Luis Miguel Castilla, also an executive at Videnza Consultores. We will discuss the economic prospects for the current year with the person whom we have yet to determine.
That's right, and we will also be with Javier Gonzalez Olaechea, as we all remember, former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Let's talk a little about political stability, and of course, this year the campaign begins for many, for others not yet. For the more experienced, they say no, others yes. But the truth is that the campaign begins with an eye on 2026. In the upcoming minutes, we will delve into all of the aforementioned details. Make sure to stick around for an in-depth look at the week's top mining news. A special thanks goes out to Gabriela Chicoma.
Thank you, Jorge, for sharing these significant mining news of the week.
The Ministry of Energy and Mines has stated that there was a time frame from 2025 to 2026 during which certain events occurred. The construction phase of 11 major mining projects worth $8 billion is expected to begin. It is about Antamina replacement, Rora replacement, Tantaguay replacement, Chalcobamba Phase 1, expansion Huancabeti, Romina, Aunt Maria, Safranal, Pampa de Pongo and Trapiche, projects located in the regions of Ancash, Puno, Huánuco, Cajamarca, Apurimac, Lima, and Arequipa. Proinversión reported that it concluded 2024 by awarding the El Algarrobo mining project located in Piura for use $2,753 million. Compañía de Minas Buenaventura will be responsible for developing the copper, zinc, and silver extraction project, which would initially reach a production of 5,000 tons per day. The mining company Element 79 Gold is anticipating the approval of its contract for surface rights for the Lucero project in Arequipa during the first quarter. The expected decision is likely to be given in the coming months, quarter of 2025. The company is making progress in discussions with the Chachas community, which led to a significant majority vote of over 75%. Their efforts have yielded positive results in terms of cooperation and agreement. Last October, for the local administration to complete these contracts so that the mine can restart production.
Thank you, Gabriela Chicoma, for sharing the top mining news of the week. I appreciate your contribution. We are now in the Rumbo Minero studios with Luis Miguel Castilla, as everyone knows him, former Minister of Economy and Finance and Director of the Videnza Institute. How are you?
How's it going, Jorge? Happy New Year.
Luis Miguel, tell us a little bit. How do you see this year being in the first week of January? How do you see this year in the area, in your specialty, the economic part? And well, you also know quite a bit about the political issue. Unfortunately, we have been discussing how mining is continuously mistreated and regarded as a disposable object, similar to a rag doll, to some radical left-wing candidates. That's what we always see in the campaigns. And besides, these elements of having 40 parties. How, in your structure, do you see all this?
I personally believe that, in contrast to previous times, politicians tend to view mining as less of a simple source of benefits. That is my perspective in a nutshell. As we near the period before the election, it is possible that this could change, but that remains uncertain. And I think that if the last few years are clear evidence, mining plays a crucial role in stabilizing the economy, especially when domestic demand is low, demonstrating its positive impact. And the mining sector, which has kept things going on various occasions. So, entering this year, I believe the central aspect of the analysis has to do with external factors to the country, which relates to the President of the United States, who will be inaugurated soon, the policies he will implement, and the potential implications it could have on global economic growth, especially in the context of China. It is common knowledge that this particular country holds great importance for our exports, especially when it comes to the impact it has on the price of commodities such as copper. Therefore, everything we are going to hear from the inaugural speech and what has preceded Trump's assumption of office, the text refers to the ongoing trade conflict, the expulsion of migrants, and a much more isolationist policy on the part of the United States. And this ultimately has two consequences. One is that it will maintain the inflation level is relatively high, which implies that the interest rates will remain higher than what was expected previously. That can make financing mining investment projects more expensive, for example. And the fact that eventually, if this escalates into something beyond a threat and becomes, well, I offer an increase in rates for tariffs. Instead, let me present you with an alternative approach that, in essence, discourages commerce, causing a decline in trade. The drop in copper prices is caused by this. What we witnessed in December's conclusion only magnifies this fact. Copper prices show substantial volatility and fluctuations. I think that factor is more important. Perhaps now, in this situation, than the social issues you mentioned, Jorge, but they should not be overlooked because as we get closer, in the HSCBIT year, the sparks of movement start to ignite. Aunt Maria, I believe this trial by fire will be crucial as we go into the next phase of building the new mine. It's hard to say for sure, but it feels very important to the company's future. There are still plenty of uncertainties regarding these projects, which will reveal the level of dissatisfaction or political activity surrounding them. I have faith that people understand the value of mining, what it produces not only in foreign exchange, but also in public resources to be invested by regional and local authorities, and that this in turn drives investment this year. If you look at the central bank's figures, the mining industry presents the largest investment opportunity for XXV. Hopefully this will materialize, but there are still external and internal factors to clarify.
Miguel, there's also the fiscal part, and unfortunately, the Congress of the Republic, at least at the time of its closure of the first legislature, has incurred in perforations, such as, for example, maintaining the 8% rate as VAT for restaurants, which is unexplained why, and it has been extended until the year of August. And gradually, in the year of 12, it would rise 12% to return to being the year 2028 and 18%. Then there's the matter of private exclusive economic zones, which, according to the Ministry of Economy and Finance, says they cannot be exempt from any tax payment and are intended to be exempted. Are we not significantly impacted in the fiscal aspect that we might need to curtail, for instance, all government expenditures and potentially lower them? Is it possible to enhance this year's progress through evolution?
Certainly, Cesar, because let's see, if there is a part of economic recovery that in fact occurred last year, the 24, the legacy of Boluarte's government is a deterioration in public finances, not only due to increased spending, much encouraged by a constitutional court that has interpreted that Congress would have spending initiative under certain considerations, but, as you rightly mentioned, the perforation in the tax framework every year. Tax cuts of 20 billion sols are being extended, maintaining exemptions. And if there are two things that are intrinsic to these exemptions, it is that one, they have not necessarily fulfilled the purpose for which they were created. And the second is that eliminating them is politically very complex. I firmly believe that this governing system lacks any sound technical foundation and rather pursues mercantilist motives of continuing to favor restaurants when there is no, let's say, technical justification. To pretend that companies now relocate to the area of Changsei paying 0% income tax for 5 years. This will distort many business decisions. The minimum threshold for investment is set at 7 billion sols in accordance with established guidelines. They will change their tax domicile from where they are to, obviously, the favored area. So, in my opinion, this contributes to a multitude of other actions taken by Congress that negatively impact government finances and income. And what it brings into discussion, not now but in the future, is the need to consolidate public accounts. And there are two ways. Either you adjust spending, which is very difficult, or you increase taxes. And that's not what we want in a country that already has a tax burden carried by the formal sector, much more than in other countries.
The General Budget Law of the Republic for 2025 has not been well received by several economists. I would like to know your opinion. They say it somewhat turns its back on the citizens. These are not the right priorities. Its purpose is to pay salaries, leaving aside public investment. There has been a lot. I wanted to know your opinion on this.
The Republic's budget is the most important law that is approved every year because it allows for the proper functioning of the state. And it is the main vehicle through which the government in power manages to materialize its political objectives, whatever they may be. So what we have here is an unbalanced budget, which is not ideal for our financial situation. And why is this? Because there are many initiatives that were included in the discussion. We have counted, there are more than 120 additional provisions of increased spending without having guaranteed funding. The assumption of collecting 7 billion sols puts this budget as inflated. The total amount greatly exceeds expectations. In potential, let's say, tax debt collections that are still, let's say, in the process of being resolved by the competent authority, the tax court or the judiciary. And that has never been done. The budget is never inflated based on a contingency of future income that SUNAT might collect. Therefore, the consequence of this is that we are relinquishing our control over a crucial attribute that rating agencies hold in high regard and which has been of significant value to us. Let's say a continuous government of the left, center, right, or whatever it may have been.
I mean, you're projecting onto something that isn't confirmed.
That's right, and that's very dangerous because what it does is that it will have to, let's say, in order to make ends meet, they will either resort to Peter's funds or take on more debt in order to supplement their finances. And that, let's say, in an environment of interest rates that will remain high, well, it doesn't help. The budget management is being tampered with. The process of redistricting is inherently political and subject to manipulation, undoubtedly. However, it is important to note that having a substantial pool of resources, for instance 500 million sols, can enable negotiations for the resolution of certain priorities that members of parliament may genuinely possess. And another thing is 20 billion sols to make a distribution of increases, especially in current spending, which is rigid spending and much more complex to reverse and gives the, let's say, the illusion of having unlimited resources. And this obviously starts to be the incentive for greater spending. It will even increase. As we approach the upcoming period of elections, it is worth noting that the possibility of re-election exists. Of congressmen to the Senate, I presume of many. Then something that has been very important begins to get out of control, which has been the discipline and good management of public accounts.
It could be an amount now and become corrupted later, as you say. That is a lack of control, not of 20,000, but suddenly I think of 100,000. It is not really an irresponsibility.
And let's look at what happened in other countries that have certainly gambled. Let's say their fiscal strength and that are now in trouble. Colombia, precisely for overspending, lost its investment grade. And not to mention other countries in crisis like Argentina and others. One of the most important issues is the investment grade we have.
What are your thoughts on the sustainability strategy proposed by the new board of Petro Peru, also referred to as the so-called strategy? Up to the year of the pandemic, as expressed by Alejandro Narvaez, both in our program Rumbo Minero and through other media outlets?
Currently, it remains mere talk, as we have yet to witness any tangible efforts to sell non-essential assets. Personally, I cannot attest to any concrete actions thus far. I haven't seen a credible plan for staff reduction, and I haven't seen anything that guarantees there won't be new requests for liquidity transfers from the Treasury. In an ideal setting, it is possible to state that once a certain area is fully operational, with a maximum capacity reached, revenue starts to be generated. We must minimize expenditures as much as possible, and you have to try to set aside the complicated assets, let's say, to specifically look for some private manager to help handle it and eventually make some decision that generates future income. Otherwise, if we don't change, we'll be stuck with this situation for the next couple of years. Honestly speaking, the board, in addition to offering their vote of confidence, let's assume nominally, has not shown concrete actions to date. And seriously, let's not forget that we've endured an entire year filled with nothing but constant noise around the little adherence to a more technical and more professional management and less state-driven than the current administration. And it's a hot potato that is once again being passed on to the next government.
Agreed. So after much consideration, what would you like to convey in your message as one of the prominent economists of Peru to the government regarding what's coming? How should things be handled? The truth is, it's going to be a storm this year. How can we effectively handle and maintain a level of tranquility within the government? What are the strategies? Guidelines that should be followed?
In my opinion, this year presents an opportunity for growth, albeit at slightly diminished rates compared to last year. The absence of any analysts besides the government's justifies this forecast. Who foresees that we will grow more this year than last year? Everyone points to a growth between 2.5 to 2.8. One key aspect is connected to the unpredictability of elections and centers around eliminating obstacles that hinder a larger influx of private investment by reducing transaction costs. Private consumption will remain steady. In fact, last year it grew at a good pace, at a growth rate above 3.5%. Maintaining the momentum depends obviously on many projects that are in the pipeline finally being able to materialize. And that will depend on the government's ability to be very pragmatic and support the projects as it has effectively done with some. And that this allows us to navigate a period of slowdown that will likely be between July of this year and July of next year. Well, lament will occur here, and sadly, a paralysis happens during election times. However, we have encountered an additional problem, as there is a security crisis that is worsened by the widespread rise of populism, and certain boundaries have been crossed in terms of management. Fiscal, for example, and in other areas where the sense of urgency fails to resonate. So I hope that the growth momentum we have continues, and obviously with an eye on the outside, as I mentioned, changes in authorities in the United States and a series of new risks that are brewing in the international economy that hopefully won't bring us surprises this year.
Thank you very much for being on Rumbo Minero, Luis Miguel. We hope to have you again at another time to continue analyzing this topic, which is extremely important for the country's economy. Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's go to a commercial break and we'll be back. Currently, we are present in our mining segment in the United States. We are taking advantage of the visit of José Gonzáles, the international editor of our magazine Rumbo Minero. Hi, José. How's it going? Welcome.
Welcome, Jorge. Thank you for joining us.
José, in our first program of the year, in January's first week, when all is calm as usual, please enlighten us a little about these initial moments, which is the very purpose of this gathering. It is necessary to address the anticipated outcomes and predictions regarding the worldwide developed markets, specifically in connection to equities and fixed income and their relationship with mining. What is the outlook of analysts and operators on the stock markets, and how might it impact mining dynamics moving forward? Also, now that the topic of Donald Trump's entry is coming up, the inauguration of Donald Trump, there are various uncertainties. What potential outcomes could arise in regards to the mineral export and import dilemma of the United States?
Indeed, Jorge. The previous year turned out to be yet another remarkable year for the stock markets in the Northern Hemisphere. Developing markets anticipate the boost at the beginning of the year. We have to put ourselves in the place of 12 months ago. It was anticipated that there would be a recession and that interest rates would not decrease. Inflation was expected to continue, and yet the United States maintained growth rates of 3% until the third quarter. Interest rates experienced a significant decrease while the stock markets continued their exceptional ascent, setting remarkable records. The question this year is whether those records can be maintained or not. Analysts generally agree that as long as corporate earnings persist, the prevailing opinion remains the same. Stocks should keep rising behind those corporate earnings, and the market could rise between 7 and 15% after the more than 30% increase it saw last year. This year, there will come a time when stocks cannot keep rising. When they are worth 3 trillion, 7 trillion, 10 trillion, at some point the equation has to realign And there are a number of questions precisely because of what you mentioned regarding the new Trump administration taking office on January 20th, and the policies it will develop. Market stocks would benefit from the implementation of a system that can effectively manage the financial and economic dynamics surrounding them. Fixed income, which fell, saw interest rates drop due to the decline in rates. The current rebound of the market has led to an increase in the 10-year U.S. Treasury bond, which serves as a benchmark for the value of the dollar, surpassing 4%. This surge can be attributed to market uncertainties. Mining stocks, especially in major markets such as Australia and Canada, have shown a lackluster performance and have not been consistent with market expectations, with medium and long-term expectations in the mining sector. There is an arbitrage. We mentioned it in relation to gold. Gold has risen much more than the stocks that produce gold. And in the case of mining companies linked to critical minerals, everything will depend on the growth dynamics between China and the United States, Europe, and the economic initiatives of the Trump administration vis-à-vis the Asian markets, and the mineral producers with those tariffs that he has promised to implement from his first day in office.
In line with this, let us shift our attention to emerging markets, particularly this section called "While Maintaining a Total of 141 Characters." The Global South. Because of the abundance of natural resources, there has been a significant increase in production, which has consequently resulted in a notable expansion. As we consider the effects of the pandemic, we must assess the potential of global emerging markets in terms of urban development and the well-being of the middle classes.
Over the past 10 years, Cesar has experienced continuous growth nurtured by financial investors and large funds, notably including the expanding presence of BlackRock. The largest investment fund in the world now manages $13 trillion, while the American economy is 23. These dimensions have attracted significant interest from major investors, including institutional investors. They will focus on what is called liquidity and optionality, stocks that possess a considerable capability to accommodate investment, alongside financial market operators having access to alternative options that can potentially provide them with substitutes to invest or divest. Furthermore, while Warren Buffett has started selling his holdings in established markets, he has refrained from decreasing his investments in countries such as Japan or China. And there are new reports saying that the coming decade could once again be a decade of emerging markets. Why? Because of natural resources at the level of metals and minerals, agro-industrial products, oil, and gas. We may once again find ourselves in a positive phase for emerging markets, but progress in the energy transition is being hindered and delayed. The new Trump administration's proposed American isolationism could potentially have a wide range of complex effects on various aspects. The geopolitics with the fall of al-Assad in Syria is becoming more complicated. There are anticipated noteworthy fluctuations in interest rates this year as a result of the performance of the dollar, interest rates, and the imposition of tariffs by the United States. Now, throughout 2025, the presence of emerging markets will persist, although the path towards success will not easily follow a linear trajectory, akin to the simplicity of the 90s.
Now, to conclude, thank you very much, as always, for being here. Tell us a little about Rumbo Minero and the plans for this. I believe that this year, Rumbo Minero will contain all of this information.
Correct. We will continue as we started in international terms. Jorge, capital will be one of the fundamental topics in the mining sector in the year 25, encompassing all these dynamics. This coverage is of utmost importance. Interest in mining will continue to be maintained. However, the exploitation of minerals is generally that there is a process that has been announced for 2 years of mergers and acquisitions. The issue at hand is the collaboration among mining companies. Their goal is to create improved platforms for what is known as the industrialization of mining. The development of these platforms is of vital importance, particularly in the south of Peru. Investments, infrastructure, the great interest that will be around copper, which will continue for the coming years. The new geopolitics, the decisions that are made, the environmental agenda, which is fundamental. All of this will be covered this year as we head towards mining. Many thanks to José Gonzáles, as always.
We would like to express our sincere gratitude to José Gonzáles for consistently being a part of our team. You can visit our website, Rumbo Minero, at www.rumbominero.com, or invest in our magazine for more information. Invest wisely, invest with the leaders, with the annual packages. If you are a supplier or want to become a supplier in the mining sector, this is the leading business tool for the mining sector. Well, in this interview, we are already in the Rumbo Minero studios with Javier Gonzalez Olaechea. We all remember him as the former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Let's talk a little about political stability. He handles it very well. And elections of the year already being in January of the year 2025. But the campaign is already starting. Welcome, Javier. How are you?
Very well. Starting the year. Thank you very much.
Tell us a little. Let's see. You have been in the government. First, how do you see the stability for this year? Aren't things going very well? How do you see things? And I would also like to know how you see the upcoming campaign. We already know the elements. There aren't a lot of parties. It's complete chaos. What is your perspective on all this? And now we will proceed to inquire about the process of mining.
Regarding stability, I think it is absolutely necessary for everyone to contribute in the country in order to have peace, continuity in the government, democratic continuity until next year in July. It is crucial to organize elections that guarantee the needed reforms. They will be absolutely transparent, with greater participation from the population, more informed. And that is what I hope and intend to contribute if I am nominated as a presidential candidate for the Republic by the PPC.
Although the economic figures, Javier, indicate that we haven't had a bad performance, at least this year. However, we haven't exceeded a growth that is quite limited, not exceeding 3.1 or 3.2%. When we need to activate other engines for the country's economic development, such as the case of T. Maria, and finally, now that it is also put into operation, Port of Chanquay. And there is a Congress of the Republic that unfortunately also drains fiscal resources by increasing, for example, the limitation on the payment of VAT for restaurants until the year of the pandemic, which only have to pay 8%. How do you think we should view the year of the pandemic if we really have to rush to reactivate the economy?
I see it as a year of economic transition towards the possibility. If we obtain the mandate, in my case, if I am a candidate for the presidency of the Republic with the PPC to make a radical change, and this consists of freeing, in order to achieve growth rates of around 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10%, it is necessary to consider all economic forces, including the mining sector, which is possible through various formulas that we can consider, discuss at this moment if you want. But I see it as a year of economic transition in the context where in the region there are other performances that are lower. But evidently, the state often does not do what it should and does what it shouldn't. And it's time to introduce the new language with very deep and radical forms and contents.
Specifically, what would you do if you were elected president? What would you do about the issue of illegal mining?
Reduce illegal mining. Look, in illegal mining, as far as I understand, we must distinguish between those that are truly linked to crimes and those that may not be illegal, but rather informal, and provide them with all the facilities for formalization. Behind the problem, behind mining, there is a lot of work. Peru is an ancient mining country. However, proposals should be thoroughly examined by knowledgeable experts, ensuring that does what is necessary to have more and better mining at all levels, small, medium, and large.
How do you manage? How would you manage a Congress that is going to be fragmented anyway?
Well, precisely what I mentioned in other interviews, I believe it is necessary. The reality insistence is that Congress will be divided, forcing us to interpret reality accordingly. So we must seek an agreement on content, a minimal government plan with 6 or 7 priorities.
Agreed upon?
Agreed upon. Those who are openly willing to participate in this radical transformation are encouraged to sign up. With a second content, providing the needed legislative measures, an agreement for a duration of 5 or 4 years would ensure continuity and stability for the future horizon. But the reforms, all radical, to remove the scourges that have robbed us of everything from hope to...
Javier, returning to the topic of mining and informality, as you know, the Comprehensive Mining Formalization Registry, the famous REINFO, has been extended for 6 more months. According to the current head of the Ministry of Energy and Mines, Mr. Jorge Montero, he states that he is going to work on a law, the MAPI law, the practice commonly referred to as artisanal mining and small-scale mining is what they call it. Do you think it's feasible for that to happen in a pre-election year? Because everyone says, gosh, no one is going to risk going against an electoral pocket that in any case is deposited in this sector.
Pocket. It is feasible, yes. That political will is needed to make it viable and to remove the electoral calendar from the debate, because it is absolutely necessary not to postpone decisions that can indeed be made and reforms to be undertaken.
Agreed. Now, delving a little more into the topic of investment, in Peru, we are set to receive nearly 50 billion in mining investment over the next decade, which amounts to a substantial injection of funds into our economy. Mining, responsible for 60% of exports, is a significant economic contributor. But in truth, we should have, for the quality and diversity of minerals we have, and the quantity, we should have 150 billion, much more. Definitely projects like a project as perfect and technological as Antamina have taken 20 years to come to fruition, and that's how long projects take. So, is it challenging to reach foreign investors? The process may not be overly complex, but effort is needed to achieve success in that area. You have been at various summits and international events, but the issue is when they arrive in Peru and start to see that separate strings don't exist here and that politics really ends up. How can we effectively address the challenge of jeopardizing important investments?
Well, by telling the truth and what is happening, not only in mining, but I stick to mining. The truth is that the only thing it has are obstacles. That is to say, one must. I once asked the minister, who was a colleague in the cabinet, if it was true, the Minister of Energy at that time, Rómulo Mucho, if it was true that for a project to advance or have a good outcome, one had to go through 240-something procedures. He told me, yes, Javier, well, reduce it to 10. Exactly to 10 or 12. Apply administrative silence. Correct. And obviously, among the main requirements are the environmental impacts, road impacts, and community repercussions. But to reduce everything, that is, in a way that unleashes the forces of the economy and tells them, of course, the foreign investor should always be informed about what they need to know. The rules should be applied equally to Peruvians and foreigners. However, just as the economy needs to be unrestricted, so does the mining industry, if you'll excuse me for saying so. All sectors. The problem, or part of the problem, is that we have a state that holds investors hostage, and in many cases, small entrepreneurs. Well, they put more obstacles in their way, leaving them with no choice but to remain in the situation. They are in the same situation. There are countries that offer tax exemptions for 20 years. For example, construction. In Panama, for the past 20 years, there has been no obligation to pay taxes for construction. This was specifically done to facilitate the growth of Miami, which stands today. Well, in Peru, we must reward by removing taxes in order to liberate all economic forces as part of the radical change and to enhance human development indices. It is important to note that growth and development are not synonymous, as growth encompasses more than just development. There was at the end.
It is really foreseeable that in the electoral campaign that is going to heat up anyway this year, with the definition of the candidacies, there will be anti-mining language. That is a given in the radical left sectors, in those who are always creating conflict and this dichotomy between agriculture and mining or water and mining. If your presidential candidacy in the Christian People's Party materializes, you will defend. You will champion the defense of modern mining. The response
The answer is here. In your book, which is the book I finished in 2 months, it will be presented, and about mining, for example, about the extraction of natural resources, a proposal for preventive matrix management in order to precisely resolve that dichotomy and put all the, we should strive to enhance prior consultation with the management matrix, exerting more effort to effectively prevent unauthorized extraction, protect from politic. This is an innovative proposal. The book will be translated into English and also presents a full explanation of the prior consultation agreement. There is nothing like it on the market. It is a proposal that took 5 years of work, which I have turned from a doctoral thesis into a book, and it is a proposal for the country. Therefore, my certainty is not related to the election because it ultimately took 8 years between the thesis and then turning it into a book, and it is a reality. It is not electoral.
Thank you very much, Javier González Olaechea, for being with us. Congratulations on the management you had in the government during the time you were in the government, and we hope it will be a high-level campaign indeed with in-depth discussions.
It is not in-depth, not content of level and truthfulness. I am willing to give it my all and to tell the truth, even if sometimes it might involve some questions. The truth must prevail. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being on Rumbo Minero. We are going to a commercial break and we'll be right back. Well, reaching the end of the program, Cesar, I believe that Javier González Olaechea is right regarding the need to discuss the fundamental issues and not continue with the same, to express it differently, complete silliness, or continuing with these topics of resentments and things that are a regrettable leftist banner. And on the other hand, Luis Miguel Castilla mentioned to us that it is also important that the positioning is not the same. That's true. Work has been done on the positioning of mining, and I believe that at this moment they are turning more to see what will be done with illegal mining. Now, the call we make from Rumbo Minero is not to practice unfair treatment towards legal mining. I mean, if you want to talk about mining, fine, we are in a free country, but do not mistreat legal mining. Not going to the Tambo Valley, as some politicians have done, to pretend there is a demonstration when there are only 20 people.
The individuals behind the camera, we all agree, are in accordance completely. And Javier González Olaechea has invited us to preview his forthcoming book, where he delves into a subject we had previously discussed with him even before his appointment as minister. In the agreement, the famous ILO agreement, each of his forms is meticulously employed to the maximum extent possible. We would discover that there is a lot of creativity and fantasy. The practice of improvising and identifying peasant communities or indigenous communities that have never been established, lacking historical documentation, would be emphasized. However, numerous objections and challenges emerge to hinder and vex the process of mining. Point. And also what Luis Miguel Castilla has said, I want to highlight, Jorge. I find the deterioration of public finances very important as a consequence of extending some tax exemptions without resources. This is an extremely dangerous situation. What measures can the government take? Regrettably, Congress is not stepping up. Indeed, they are failing to respond.
Well, this year is going to be an election year. Let's hope that this time the politicians rise to the level of a high-level debate, so to speak. Well, thank you very much. My name is Jorge León Benavides, and together with Cesar Campos, we have developed this program, Rumbo Minero. In a few minutes, we will be with you to see what Peru Construye is going to do. Everything related to construction and infrastructure. Thank you very much.